The ship moved through the dark clouds like a knife cutting through thick smoke. Inside the control room, Jake Morrison held tight to his chair as the vessel shook hard. Red lightning flashed outside the windows, making everything look like it was on fire. "The ship is getting too hot," said Amy Brooks. She was looking at her screen with worried eyes. "We need to be careful, Captain." Jake nodded. He knew this planet was dangerous. Everyone said Kepler 442 was a death world. The air could kill a person in minutes. Rivers of hot, melted rock flowed across the ground like water. The sky was full of poison, but they had to come here. 3 weeks ago, they picked up a strange signal from this planet. It was not natural. Someone or something had made it. The ship broke through the lower clouds. Jake looked out at the land below. It was terrible and beautiful at the same time. Black mountains stood tall against rivers of glowing orange lava. Huge fountains of hot gas shot up into the air. Everything looked like a nightmare. "I found something," Amy said. Her voice was different now. More excited. "There is flat ground 3 kilometers to the north. The signal is coming from there." "Take us down," Jake said. Carl Hughes, who was sitting at the navigation station, spoke up. "Sir, are we sure about this? That place looks wrong, too flat. Too regular." Jake had noticed it too. As they got closer, he could see a large flat area of black stone. It looked too perfect to be natural, and in the middle of it stood something impossible. It was a door. Just a door. Nothing else. The door was huge, maybe 50 meters tall. It was made of black stone that shined like glass. Strange patterns covered it from top to bottom. The patterns seemed to move when Jake was not looking directly at them. But the strangest thing was that the door stood alone. No walls, no building. Just a giant door standing in the middle of nowhere. "What in the world?" Carl whispered. The ship landed on the flat stone with a soft sound. Jake stood up. His mind was racing. Who would build a door like this? Why put it on a planet where nothing could live? "Amy, Carl, get your suits on." "We are going outside." Amy looked worried. "Captain, the air out there will kill us if our suits fail." "I know," Jake said. "But we did not come all this way to just look from inside the ship. Get the scanning tools ready. If this is what I think it is, we just found proof that someone else lived in the galaxy before us." 20 minutes later, 3 people in white suits walked out of the ship. Each step was slow and careful. The ground under their feet was so hot they could feel it through their boots. Jake walked toward the door slowly. His suit was giving him lots of information. The door was very old, maybe millions of years old. The wind and weather had worn it down over a long, long time. "I cannot find any power source," Amy said through the radio, "but the signal is definitely coming from here. It is like the stone itself is sending it." Jake reached out with his hand. It was shaking a little. The patterns on the door looked like they were moving in the corner of his eye. When he touched the cold stone, nothing happened. He pushed harder. He ran his hand along the strange carvings. Still nothing. "Maybe it is broken," Carl said. "Or maybe we need some kind of key." Jake stepped back. He looked at the door from farther away. Why build this here? What was the point of a door on a planet that killed everything? Then the door spoke. The voice did not come from the air. It came from everywhere. From the ground, from the door, from inside Jake's chest. It spoke in sounds that no human could make. But somehow Jake understood every word. "Human," the voice said. It sounded old and tired. After so long, a human. Jake stepped backward fast. His heart was beating hard. Amy and Carl stood frozen like statues. "What are you?" Jake asked. His voice was barely a whisper. The door began to glow with soft blue light. The patterns on its surface got brighter. "I am the last sentinel. I have waited 3 billion years for your kind to find me. The message was sent across the stars, across time itself. And now you have come." Jake's mind could not understand it. 3 billion years. That was before Earth even had animals or plants or anything complex living on it. "Why?" Jake asked. "Why wait for humans?" The light from the door got stronger. "Because you are the inheritors. The ones who were spoken of in the old days. The species that would survive when all others failed." The light began to pulse like a heartbeat. "I have much to tell you, human. But first, you must decide. Will you open me and learn the truth of what came before? Or will you run away and leave the galaxy to its fate?" The 3 humans stood in silence. The question hung in the air between them like a heavy weight. Around them, the death planet continued its endless dance of fire and poison. Lightning flashed across the black sky. Lava rivers glowed in the distance. Jake looked at Amy and Carl. They both looked scared but also excited. This was why they explored space, to find things like this, to learn that humans were not alone in the universe. But the door's question scared him. What did it mean about the galaxy's fate? What truth was hidden inside? Tell me more, Jake said to the door. Before I decide, I need to know what you are offering. The blue light pulsed again. Very well, human. I will tell you a story. A story of the ones who came before. A story of great power and terrible danger. A story that will change everything you know about the universe. But be warned, once you hear this story, you cannot unhear it. Once you know the truth, you must choose what to do with it. And that choice will affect not just you, but every human who has ever lived or ever will live. Jake felt cold despite the burning heat all around him. This was bigger than he thought. Much bigger. But he had to know. Tell me, he said. Tell me everything. The sentinel's light grew brighter and it began to speak. The sentinel's voice filled the air around them. Jake stood very still, listening to words that would change everything. Long ago, before your son was born, there was a civilization called the Architects. They were the first intelligent beings in this galaxy. They lived on 1,000,000 worlds. They built cities that touched the stars. They thought they would live forever. The patterns on the door began to show pictures. Jake saw beings made of crystal and light. They moved through amazing cities that seemed to bend and twist in impossible ways. He watched them spread across the galaxy, building and creating and exploring. The Architects were powerful, the Sentinel continued. They found other species and helped them grow. They shared their knowledge freely. The galaxy was full of life and joy under their care. Then the pictures changed. They became dark and frightening, but then something came. Something from beyond the galaxy. Something that had no name, no form, no mercy. We call them the Harvesters. Jake felt Amy grab his arm through the suit. They all watched as the pictures showed what happened next. The Harvesters are not like anything you know. They are not ships or creatures. They are tears in reality itself. Wounds in space that bleed darkness. Where they go, everything stops existing. Stars, planets, life, all of it gets pulled into nothing. The pictures showed the Architects trying to fight. Jake saw battles that covered entire solar systems. He saw weapons that could destroy planets. He saw brave last stands that made his heart hurt. But it was all for nothing. The Architects fought for 300 years, the Sentinel said. Its voice sounded sad now. But the Harvesters could not be stopped. For every one destroyed, 2 more came. They learned from every attack. They got stronger. In 300 years, a civilization that had lasted 10 million years was wiped out. Carl's voice shook when he spoke. Are they still out there? These Harvesters? Yes, the Sentinel said. They sleep between galaxies, waiting. When a civilization becomes advanced enough, when they make certain technologies, the Harvesters wake up. They come, they consume. Then they sleep again, waiting for the next harvest. Jake felt sick. How many times has this happened? 17 times since the Architects fell. 17 civilizations have risen to the stars. 17 times the Harvesters came. Now there is almost no one left in the galaxy. Just young species like yours, not yet advanced enough to be noticed. Then why tell us? Amy asked. If we keep developing, we will be noticed too. Yes, the Sentinel agreed. In perhaps 1 or 2 of your centuries, you will cross the threshold. The Harvesters will detect you, and they will come. The 3 humans stood in shocked silence. Jake's mind was racing. Everything they had worked for, everything humanity had achieved, it was all leading to destruction. The Architects could not save themselves, the Sentinel said. But in their final days, they looked at the data they had collected from across the galaxy. They found your world, Earth. They saw life just beginning to crawl onto the land. They saw potential. They saw us, Jake whispered. They saw what you could become. Humans are different from most species. You did not evolve to be perfect at one thing. You evolved to be good enough at everything. You are survivors. You adapt. You overcome. The Architects thought that maybe, just maybe, you could do what they could not. The door's light changed from blue to deep purple. So they built us. The Sentinels. They placed us on death worlds. Places the Harvesters would never look. They put knowledge inside us and sent a message into space. A message that only certain species could follow. A message that led here. What knowledge? Jake asked. Everything the Architects learned about the Harvesters. Their patterns, their weaknesses, how they think and fight. And more than that, we carry a choice. A beacon that can do one of 2 things. Jake stepped closer. What things? The beacon can hide you. It can make your civilization invisible to the harvesters. They will think you are still primitive, not worth their attention. You could survive for thousands of years, maybe until the harvesters finally die out. And the second option? The sentinel paused. When it spoke again, its voice was heavy. The beacon can challenge them. It can send a signal that tells the harvesters you are here. You know about them, and you will not go quietly. They will come, but you will have time to prepare. Perhaps 50 of your years. You can use our knowledge to build defenses, to create weapons that can hurt them. But we would have to fight, Carl said. Yes, a war that could destroy your entire species. The harvesters have never been defeated. At best, you might hurt them enough that they leave your part of space alone. Jake felt the weight of it crushing down on him. Hide and hope to survive, or fight and probably die. Those were the options. There is a third choice, the sentinel said quietly. Walk away. Leave this place. Forget you found me. Continue living as you have been. You might have 1,000 years before the harvesters notice you. That is time to live, to love, to create. Is that not worth something? Amy spoke up. But if we walk away, we die unprepared when they finally come. Yes, but you will have had those years of peace, of not knowing, of not living in fear. Jake's mind was spinning. How could he make this choice? How could anyone? I need to understand something, he said. The architects chose to fight even though they knew they would lose. Why? The sentinel was quiet for a moment. Because they were alive. Because they had experienced the beauty of the universe. Because even if they could not win, their struggle would mean something. Perhaps it would help someone else someday to succeed where they failed. How do we access this beacon? Jake asked. The door will open for only one person. One human may enter, may receive the knowledge, may carry the beacon. That person becomes the keeper of the choice. Only they can activate it. Jake looked at Amy and Carl. They both nodded at him. It should be you, Captain, Amy said. You brought us here. Jake wanted to say no. This was too much for one person. But he knew they were right. If I go in, what happens to them? Jake asked. They remain safe. This is between you and me, human. But know this. Once you cross this threshold, you will be changed. You will carry knowledge that weighs like a mountain. You will see the universe differently. You can never unknow what you learn. Jake looked up at the massive door. Beyond it was knowledge that could save humanity or doom them. Beyond it was a choice that would affect billions of people who did not even know this conversation was happening. I have a question, Jake said. Why did the architects make it one person's choice? Why not let humanity decide together? Because when everyone chooses, no one is responsible. When committees decide, everyone blames everyone else. But when one person chooses, when one person carries the full weight, the choice has meaning. It has moral weight. That is what the architects believed. Jake took a deep breath. Through his helmet, he could see the rivers of lava, the poisoned sky, the impossible door standing alone against the darkness. I will do it, Jake said. Open the door. The patterns blazed with light. The door began to move, grinding like mountains sliding apart. Beyond the opening, Jake could see darkness filled with strange stars. Remember, the sentinel said, whatever you decide, the burden is yours. Choose wisely, human. Jake looked one last time at Amy and Carl. Then he stepped through the door into the darkness beyond. The moment Jake stepped through the door, everything changed. The heat vanished. The toxic air was gone. Even gravity disappeared. He floated in a space that was not quite dark and not quite light. Above him, stars wheeled across the sky, but they were wrong. The patterns were different from anything he had ever seen. Do not be afraid. The sentinel's voice surrounded him. It was gentler now. This is the archive. A pocket of folded space. Here, the knowledge of the architects has been kept safe for billions of years. As the voice spoke, light began to fill the space around Jake. It was not harsh or bright, just a soft glow that seemed to come from everywhere. Shapes formed in the light, becoming clearer and more solid. Jake saw them. The architects, they were beautiful in a strange way. Their bodies were made of crystal structures and flowing energy. They moved through cities that seemed impossible. Buildings that curved through dimensions Jake could barely understand. He watched as they spread across the stars, building and creating and exploring. They found other species and helped them grow. The galaxy bloomed with life under their guidance. Then the warning signs came. Strange things happening at the edge of the galaxy, entire star systems going silent. The architects sent ships to investigate. None came back. More systems fell dark. The silence spread like a disease, eating sector after sector. The architects prepared for war. They gathered their fleets, their most powerful weapons, their smartest minds. Then the harvesters arrived. Jake watched in horror as the vision showed him the truth. The harvesters were not ships or beings like anything he knew. They were massive cosmic things that existed partly outside normal space. They appeared as tears in reality, wounds in the fabric of existence that bled pure darkness. Where they passed, matter simply stopped existing. It was converted to energy and pulled into the void beyond the galaxy. The architects fought. Jake watched battles that covered light years of space. He saw weapons that could shatter planets. He saw last stands that made his heart break even though they happened billions of years ago. But it was hopeless. For every harvester destroyed, two more came. They adapted to every weapon. They learned from every strategy. They were unstoppable. In 300 years, a civilization that had lasted 10 million years was reduced to scattered refugees hiding in the dark spaces between stars. The last generation of architects made a choice. They would not run to another galaxy. They would not abandon the life that remained. Instead, they would make sure that something survived. They would pass on their knowledge so that it would not be lost forever. The vision showed Jake how the Sentinels were built. Quantum computers housed in shells that could not be destroyed, placed on worlds where the harvesters would never look. Death worlds like Kepler 442, planets with poison air and molten rock, places where only the desperate or curious would go. "We studied you," the Sentinel said. The vision now showed Earth, young and covered in simple life. "For millions of years we watched your world through automated probes. We saw your ancestors leave the trees. We saw you learn to use tools to make fire. We saw you spread across your planet, adapting to every environment, surviving ice ages and disasters that would have ended other species." The vision moved faster, showing humanity's rise. Jake saw civilizations grow and fall. He saw wars and peace. He saw the first rockets reaching for the sky. "You are unique," the Sentinel continued. "Most species achieve intelligence through specialization. They find one perfect skill and exploit it. But you evolved through generalization. You became adequate at everything rather than perfect at one thing. It made you weaker individually, but stronger as a species. You are survivors." The vision faded. Jake found himself in a chamber of light. In the center floated a sphere no larger than his fist. It was made of the same material as the door outside. It pulsed with a soft inner glow. "The beacon," the Sentinel said. "Touch it and it will bond with you. The knowledge of the architects will become yours. You will understand the harvesters. You will carry the choice." Jake floated toward the sphere. His hand reached out slowly. "Tell me about the options again." "All of them. The shroud will hide you. It will change the quantum signature of your technology. To harvester sensors, you will look like a primitive species. You could develop in secret, spreading slowly through the stars. In 10 or 20,000 years, the harvesters may grow dormant. They have done this before when there is no prey. You could outlast them. What if we are discovered anyway?" Jake asked. "Then you die unprepared. The shroud is not perfect. It is a gamble that you can stay hidden long enough. And the challenge? The harvesters will receive a signal that marks you as an equal civilization. They will come, but not with full force. They will send scouts first, testing your strength. You will have time to prepare. Perhaps 50 of your years. The knowledge in this beacon will help you build weapons that can hurt them. Defenses they cannot easily break. But understand, the harvesters have never been defeated. At best you might hurt them badly enough that they ignore your part of space. At worst you become extinct. Another dead species whose ruins puzzle future archaeologists." Jake closed his eyes. Though in this strange space it made no difference. 50 years to prepare for war against enemies that had destroyed civilizations millions of years older than humanity. It seemed impossible. "You said there was a third option." "Walking away. Yes, leave this place. Seal the door behind you. Continue your expansion naturally. You may have 1,000 years before the harvesters notice you. That is time to live, to create, to experience joy. Is that not valuable?" Jake thought about Earth, about the billions of people living their lives not knowing about the threat in the dark. He thought about humanity's colonies, Mars, Europa, the settlements around other stars. All of it could continue and grow, or it could all burn if the harvesters came and humanity was not ready. "I need to understand something," Jake said. "The architects chose to fight. They knew they would lose, but they fought anyway." "Why?" The Sentinel was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke, Jake heard something he had not heard before. emotion. Because we were alive. Because we had seen the beauty of the universe. Because we had experienced love and art and discovery. Because even if we could not save ourselves, perhaps our struggle would mean something. Perhaps it would allow another species someday to succeed where we failed. Jake reached out and touched the beacon. Light exploded through him. Knowledge poured into his mind like water breaking through a dam. It was vast and terrible and beautiful all at once. He saw technologies beyond human understanding. He saw weapons that could tear holes in reality. He saw shields that could withstand the death of stars. He saw the harvesters' weaknesses, the patterns in their attacks, the theories about where they came from and why they existed. And he felt the weight of the choice settle onto his shoulders like a physical thing pressing down on him. When the light faded, Jake found himself back on the plateau. The toxic atmosphere pressed against his suit again. Amy and Carl rushed to him. Their voices were urgent with questions, but he held up a hand to stop them. In his suit's storage pocket, he could feel the beacon. It was small and warm against his chest. "We need to go," Jake said quietly. "Now, I will explain on the ship." As their vessel lifted off from Kepler 442, Jake watched the door shrink in the distance. It stood alone once more, waiting for the next explorer, waiting for the next species to stumble upon the architect's final gift. Inside his cabin, Jake sat in darkness and held the beacon in his hands. He had the knowledge now. He understood the choice before him. But understanding and choosing were two very different things. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. Every day felt like a year to Jake Morrison. He had told Amy and Carl only the basic facts. That the door contained information about an ancient civilization, that there was a potential threat, but he could not bring himself to share the full truth yet. He could not put this burden on them. The knowledge from the beacon had become part of his mind in strange ways. When he closed his eyes, he could see star charts of the galaxy as it had been during the architect's time. He understood mathematics that human science had not even dreamed of yet. He dreamed in alien languages. He saw ghostly images of crystalline cities that had turned to dust billions of years ago. And always at the edge of his thoughts, he felt the presence of the harvesters. The beacon had given him an understanding of them that was almost like instinct. He knew they were drawn to certain patterns of electromagnetic activity. They were drawn to certain types of quantum technology that only advanced civilizations created. Humanity was approaching those thresholds. Maybe within a century or two, humans would become visible to the cosmic predators. The Sentinel had been right. The clock was already ticking. "Captain, Earth Command wants a full report on the Kepler mission." Amy's voice came through the intercom, pulling Jake from his dark thoughts. "They want details." Jake's hand went to his chest where the beacon rested beneath his uniform. "Tell them we encountered unexpected stellar activity. Limited findings. Full report upon arrival." There was a pause. "Sir, they are going to want more than that." "I know," Jake said quietly. "But that is all they get for now." In his cabin, Jake pulled out the beacon and set it on his desk. Under the ship's lights, it looked almost ordinary. Just a smooth sphere of dark stone. But when he touched it, information flowed into his mind like a river. The architects had left detailed instructions on how to use the beacon. The shroud option was simple. It just needed to be placed near any quantum communication hub, and it would automatically start masking humanity's technological signature. Within days, human civilization would effectively vanish from the spectrum that the harvesters watched. The challenge was more complex. It required deliberate activation, a specific sequence that would send a pulse through space-time itself. The harvesters would detect it instantly and understand it as a declaration. "We are here. We know about you. We will not go quietly." Jake had run through the scenarios in his mind 1,000 times. The shroud was the safe choice, the logical choice. Humanity could continue to grow in relative safety. Maybe they would outlast the harvesters. Maybe in 10,000 years, when the cosmic predators had exhausted themselves, humanity could emerge from hiding. But that assumed the shroud would work perfectly, that the harvesters would not eventually see through it, that some random human discovery would not give them away before they were ready. The challenge meant war. But it was war on humanity's terms. 50 years of preparation, armed with the architect's knowledge, a chance to fight and determine their own fate rather than hiding and hoping. Of course, it was also likely a death sentence for billions. The ship entered Earth's solar system on a Tuesday morning. As they passed Mars, Jake looked down at the red planet's dome colonies. At the lights of cities where 500,000 people lived, families and scientists and dreamers building a new world. Would they thank him for whatever choice he made? Or would they curse his name as the harvesters came? Earth Command had prepared a welcome for their return. The ship docked at Luna Station. There were crowds of officials, scientists, and journalists. They all wanted to know about Kepler 442, about the mysterious signal, about what had been found. Jake gave them nothing. It was a natural phenomenon, he told the press conference. His face showed no emotion. A resonance in the planet's magnetic field that looked like a structured signal. We documented it. The data is being processed. The lie felt like poison in his mouth. Director Helen Cross of Earth Command was harder to deflect. She cornered Jake in his temporary quarters at Luna Station. Her face was stern. I have read your preliminary report, she said, closing the door. It is garbage, Jake. 3 weeks of investigation and your conclusion is basically weird rocks and electromagnetic noise? We sent you across the galaxy for that? Jake met her gaze. That is what we found. No. Helen moved closer. Her voice dropped low. I have known you for 15 years. You are one of the best exploratory captains in the fleet. You do not get excited about electromagnetic noise. What really happened down there? For a moment, Jake considered telling her everything. Helen was smart and careful. She was one of the few people in Earth Command he trusted completely. But the Sentinel's warning echoed in his mind. The harvesters have listening devices scattered throughout all technological civilizations. Could he risk it? Could he gamble that whatever monitoring systems the harvesters had planted would not detect this conversation? I need time, Jake said finally. There are some things in the data I need to verify personally. Give me 1 month. Then I will have a full report. Helen studied him for a long moment. 1 month. But Jake, if you are sitting on something big, you need to trust the system. We have procedures for this. I know, Jake said. 1 month. After she left, Jake sat in the darkness and tried to think. He could not keep this secret forever. Eventually someone would need to know, but who? How do you tell the human race that they are being hunted? How do you explain that their choice is to hide or fight? And both options might lead to extinction. The beacon pulsed warmly in his pocket, as if reminding him it was there. His terminal chimed with a message. It was from Amy. Captain, I know you are carrying something heavy. I have seen the way you look at that stone you brought back. Whatever it is, you do not have to bear it alone. Carl and I are here. We went through that door with you, even if we did not walk inside. Let us help. Jake felt something tighten in his chest. She was right. He had been so focused on the size of the decision that he had forgotten the most human solution. Share the burden, he typed a reply. Tomorrow. Luna Station, Observation Deck C. Come alone, both of you. And Amy, make sure you are not followed. This is important. The next day, the three of them stood looking out at Earth hanging in the black sky. Jake told them everything. He showed them the beacon. He let them touch it and feel the faint pulse of ancient knowledge inside. He explained the harvesters. The architects. The impossible choice. Carl was the first to speak when Jake finished. So we are doomed either way. Fight and probably die, or hide and maybe survive. That is one way to look at it, Jake said. What is the other way? Amy asked quietly. Jake turned to look at Earth, at the blue and white sphere that held everything humanity had ever known. The other way is that we finally have control. For billions of years, life on Earth was at the mercy of asteroids and ice ages. Random chance decided if we lived or died. This is different. This is a choice. We get to decide how our story ends. Or how it continues, Amy said. She touched the beacon gently. Jake, what are you thinking, really? Jake was quiet for a long time. I think about my grandmother. She grew up during the water wars. She watched her city tear itself apart. She survived. Built a new life. Had a family. She always told me that the only way to face fear was to look it in the eye and decide you were bigger than it. The challenge, Carl said. You want to activate the challenge. I do not know, Jake admitted. Part of me does. Part of me wants to give humanity the chance to stand up and fight. But another part knows that is prideful, maybe even cruel. Who am I to make that choice for billions? Amy crossed her arms. Her analytical mind was working. If we activate the shroud and it fails, we die unprepared. If we activate the challenge and lose the war, we die fighting. But there is a third scenario you have not considered. What? What if we activate the challenge and win? The three of them stood in silence. The weight of that possibility hung in the air. Finally, Jake spoke. I need to think. But whatever I decide, I want you both to know it is not your burden. I took the knowledge. I have to live with the consequences. That is where you are wrong, Captain, Carl said firmly. We are in this together. That is what crew means. Jake watched his friends leave. Then he looked out at Earth one more time. 1 month Helen had given him. 1 month to decide the fate of humanity. Jake Morrison stood alone in the observation dome of Luna Station. 3 weeks had passed since he returned from Kepler 442. Earth floated before him in the darkness, beautiful and peaceful. The people down there had no idea about the danger hanging over them like a sword. He had spent the time well, studying the knowledge the beacon had given him, understanding not just the facts but the deeper meanings beneath them. The architects had been thorough. They left not just technical information but philosophy and wisdom earned through 10 million years of existence. One message kept coming back to him. It was encoded in mathematical concepts that roughly translated to human language as, a civilization that cannot choose its own path is already dead. We chose to fight not because we believed we would win, but because the act of fighting was itself a statement of our right to exist. Let those who come after us remember this. Survival without dignity is just a slower death. But was that true? Jake had talked to historians and philosophers, anyone who might help him understand the weight of the choice. Most did not know what he was really asking. He had to hide his questions in hypotheticals and thought experiments about survival. The answers were mixed. Some said that survival was the only thing that mattered, that any action that kept humanity alive was right. Others said that some things were worth dying for, that a species that hid in fear forever was not really alive. None of them knew they were deciding their own fate. Jake had also done something else, something the Sentinel warned against. He had carefully studied humanity's networks. He used the beacon's knowledge to understand the patterns of data flow, the quantum signatures that defined human technology. And he found them. The seeds, they were subtle, almost invisible, fragments of code buried deep in quantum communication protocols, anomalies in the background radiation of hyperspace relays, the harvester's listening posts, scattered throughout human space like hidden bombs. The beacon taught him how to see them. But more importantly, it taught him how to blind them. For a short time, maybe 6 hours, he could create a quantum dead zone, a bubble of space where the seeds could not see or hear. It would be enough time to activate either the shroud or the challenge without the harvesters knowing immediately. But after that 6-hour window closed, the seeds would recover, and if he chose the challenge, they would detect it. The clock would start. 50 years of preparation. Could humanity manage that? Jake had run the calculations. He extrapolated from the architect's knowledge. With the technology in the beacon, humanity could develop defenses, weapons that could at least hurt the harvesters. They could fortify their worlds, build fleets that had a chance. It would not be easy. It would require everyone working together. Every nation and colony united. There would be fear and panic. Some would not believe until it was too late. But if humanity could overcome their divisions, they had a chance, not a great chance. The beacon's predictions gave humanity a 17% probability of surviving a harvester assault with current technology. With 50 years of preparation, that increased to 32%. Not good odds. But not zero either. The shroud had a 78% chance of keeping humanity hidden until the harvesters went dormant. But that assumed no accidents. No unexpected discoveries that would break through the disguise. And it meant accepting fear as permanent, always hiding, always looking over their shoulder. Jake's terminal chimed. A message from Helen Cross. Your month is up, Jake. My office tomorrow morning. And bring whatever you have been hiding. That is not a request. He had run out of time. That night, Jake called Amy and Carl to the observation dome. When they arrived, he was standing with the beacon in his hand, watching Earth turn below. I have made my decision, Jake said without looking at them. But before I tell you, I need to know something. If you were in my position, what would you choose? Carl answered immediately. The challenge. We are human, Jake. We do not hide. We fight, even if billions might die. Even then. Because the alternative is living in fear forever. That is not living. Amy was quieter, more thoughtful. I have been running simulations in my head. The math does not favor the challenge. The smart choice, the logical choice, is the shroud. But, Jake prompted. Amy smiled sadly. But I am a scientist because I believe in pushing boundaries. In reaching for the unknown even when it is dangerous. If we hide, we stop growing. We stop being who we are. She paused. But Jake, you cannot let our opinions decide this. Whatever you choose, it has to be your choice. You are the one who has to live with it. Jake nodded slowly. I have been thinking about why the architects left the choice to one person. They could have built the beacon to activate automatically, to make the decision for whatever species found it. But they did not. Why? Carl asked. Because they understood something about conscious choice. If the decision is made by committee or vote, then no one is truly responsible. Everyone can blame everyone else. But if one person chooses, if one person bears the full weight, then the choice means something. It has moral weight. Jake raised the beacon. He felt its warmth pulse against his hand. The architects fought and died. They knew they would lose, but they fought anyway because it meant something to them. Because resistance, even futile resistance, was a statement about who they were. You are going to activate the challenge, Amy said quietly. No, Jake said, and saw their surprised faces. I am going to activate both. That is not possible, Carl said. The beacon can only do one or the other. The beacon as designed, yes, but the architects left all their knowledge, including how the beacon works. I have spent 3 weeks studying it, understanding the quantum mechanics behind it. Jake's fingers moved across the beacon's surface, tracing patterns that had not existed before. I can modify it. I can make it send 2 signals at the same time. What would that do? Amy asked. The shroud activates first, immediately cloaking our technological signature. To the harvester's seeds, we will appear to have suddenly become primitive again. They will note it as strange but not urgent. And the challenge? Broadcasts on a 30-year delay, encoded to look like background radiation until the timer expires. When it finally triggers, the harvesters will detect it and start moving toward us. But by then we will have had 30 years of development in secret. 30 years to build defenses while hidden behind the shroud. Then when they come, we drop the shroud and fight. Carl's eyes widened. You are creating a trap. You are letting them think we are primitive, then surprising them when they arrive. Not a surprise. They will know we challenged them once the signal goes out. But they will underestimate us because of the shroud. They will send a smaller force. It is not perfect, but it improves our odds to about 48%. Nearly even odds, Amy breathed. That is better than either option alone. It is also more complicated, Jake warned. It requires perfect execution. If the shroud fails early, if the challenge signal is detected too soon, the whole thing falls apart. And it still means war. People will still die. Earth might burn. But we will have a fighting chance, Carl said. And we will have it on our terms. Jake looked out at Earth one more time. Tomorrow he would go to Helen Cross. He would tell her everything. Show her the beacon. Explain the modification. Let her decide whether to trust him. But the real choice had already been made. Here in this dome, with his 2 friends beside him. I am going to recommend this to Earth Command, Jake said. But I want you both to understand something. If this goes wrong, if I have miscalculated, historians will remember me as the man who doomed humanity. Or they will remember you as the man who gave humanity a chance, Amy said. Either way, I will be the one who chose. The next morning, Jake walked into Helen Cross's office with the beacon in hand. He placed it on her desk and began to explain. She listened without interrupting as he told her about the architects, the harvesters, the impossible choice. When he finished, Helen was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. If you are lying, if this is some kind of breakdown, I will have you committed. I am not lying. Show me. Jake touched the beacon. The knowledge flowed. Helen gasped as the history of the architects played before her eyes. As the truth of the harvesters burned into her mind. When it ended, she sat back. Her face was pale. My God, she whispered. It is all real. Yes, and you want to do this? Activate both signals? Start a war? I want to give humanity the best chance to survive with dignity intact. Helen stared at the beacon for a long moment. Then she picked up her terminal. I need to make calls. If we are doing this, we need approval from the Security Council. They need to know what they are agreeing to. Over the next week, Jake told his story to Earth's leaders. Some believed immediately. Others resisted and argued. But eventually, faced with the truth of the architect's legacy, they all reached the same conclusion. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would take the third path, the one Jake had created. On a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 month after leaving Kepler 442, Jake Morrison stood in a secure facility deep beneath Luna's surface. The beacon rested in a specially designed chamber, surrounded by quantum dampeners. Representatives from every major nation and colony watched via secure feed. Helen Cross stood beside him. "Are you ready?" she asked. Jake thought about all the light filled the chamber as the beacon began its work. Jake felt the energy flowing through his hands, through the device, spreading outward into the quantum fabric of space itself. The shroud signal went first, racing through dimensions humans could barely perceive. Within minutes, humanity's technological signature began to fade from the spectrum the harvesters monitored. To any observer watching from the dark spaces between galaxies, human civilization had just regressed thousands of years in an instant. Their quantum communications looked primitive now. Their energy signatures appeared pre-industrial. It was as if humanity had suddenly forgotten how to build anything more complex than simple machines. The challenge signal followed, encoded deep within the quantum noise of space. It would sleep for 30 years, invisible and silent. Then it would wake and scream humanity's defiance across the galaxy. When the process finished, Jake felt the beacon grow cold in his hands. It had served its purpose. The choice had been made. "How long until they come?" Helen asked quietly. 30 years until the challenge activates. Then, depending on where the harvesters are, anywhere from 10 to 50 years of travel time. We have at most 80 years. At least 40. "A lifetime," Helen said. "For some of us." "Or just the beginning," Jake replied. As Jake left the facility and emerged into Luna Station's common areas, he looked up at Earth through the dome overhead. Somewhere down there, people were living their lives, laughing, loving, dreaming. They did not know yet what was coming. They did not know their world had changed forever, but they would learn, and humanity would prepare. Within days, the truth began to spread, not through official channels at first, but through whispers and rumors. The governments of Earth tried to control the message, but information like this could not be contained. Within a week, everyone knew. The architects, the harvesters, the choice that had been made. There was panic, as Jake had known there would be. Some people refused to believe it. They called it a hoax, a conspiracy. Government lies meant to justify some hidden agenda. Others believed too well and fell into despair. If cosmic predators were coming, what was the point of anything? But most people, after the initial shock, did something very human. They got to work. Jake watched from Luna Station as Earth transformed itself. The beacon's knowledge was being carefully distributed to research facilities across the planet. Scientists who had spent their lives studying one narrow field suddenly had access to technologies they had only dreamed of. Engineers who had built simple spacecraft were now learning to construct vessels that could bend space-time. It was not easy. The architect's knowledge was vast, but it was also alien. Human minds had to learn to think in new ways, to understand concepts that did not translate easily into human language or mathematics. Some breakthroughs came quickly. Others took months of frustrating work, but humanity persisted. That was what they did best. Jake became something between a hero and a burden. People wanted to meet him, to touch him, as if proximity to the man who made the choice would give them courage. Others blamed him for bringing this threat to their attention. "We could have lived in ignorance," they said. "We could have had peace." He understood both reactions. He felt both emotions himself in the dark hours before sleep. 6 months after the activation, Jake stood before the newly formed Defense Council. It was a body that included representatives from every nation, every colony, every significant human settlement. They met not on Earth, but on a new station being constructed at the edge of the solar system, a place that would become the command center for humanity's defense. "Captain Morrison," said Director Chen, who led the council, "we have reviewed the architect's technical data. We understand the basics of what we need to build, but we need your input on strategy. You have seen the harvesters in the visions the beacon showed you. You understand them in ways we do not. How do we fight them? Jake had been preparing for this question. We do not fight them the way the architects did. We cannot match their power directly, but we have advantages they do not expect. What advantages? Asked General Park, the military representative. We are small. The architects spanned 1 million worlds. When the harvesters came, they had to defend everything. We only have a few dozen significant settlements. We can concentrate our defenses. And, Chen prompted, we are unpredictable. Every species the harvesters have faced was highly specialized. They evolved to be perfect at specific things. Humans are generalists. We are adaptable. We can change tactics quickly. That will confuse them. What else? Jake took a breath. We are mean. Humanity did not become the dominant species on Earth by being nice. We survived ice ages and predators and each other. When we are cornered, we fight dirty. The harvesters will learn that. The council members looked at each other. Some smiled grimly. Give us a plan, Captain, Chen said. Over the next months, Jake worked with the best military minds humanity had to offer. They designed a defense strategy that used every advantage they had. Mobile defense platforms that could relocate quickly. Weapons that could strike from unexpected angles. Automated systems that could fight without risking human lives. But more than technology, they focused on something the architects had lacked: unity. The architects had been spread across the galaxy. When the harvesters came, each world fought its own battle. There was no coordination, no shared strategy. By the time they tried to unite, it was too late. Humanity would not make that mistake. Every settlement, every colony, every ship was part of the network. They trained together. They planned together. They became not just a collection of human habitats, but a true interplanetary civilization. Jake watched as humanity transformed over the years. New technologies emerged from the research into the architect's knowledge. Ships that could travel faster, weapons that could crack asteroids, shields that could withstand tremendous force. But more importantly, he watched humanity transform socially. The old divisions that had plagued them for centuries began to matter less. National borders seemed silly when you were facing extinction from cosmic predators. Religious differences felt petty when you were building weapons to fight tears in reality. People who had spent their lives hating each other based on skin color or birthplace or belief systems found themselves working side by side. Because the harvesters did not care about any of those things. To them, all humans were just food. 5 years after the activation, Jake visited Mars. The colony had grown massively. Where once there had been a few thousand people in scattered domes, there were now millions living in interconnected cities. But more than that, the planet had become a manufacturing center. Shipyards orbited above, building the defense fleet. He met with Governor Lisa Martinez in her office overlooking the Red Plains. "How is morale?" Jake asked. Lisa smiled. "Better than you would think. People are scared, yes, but they are also excited. For the first time in human history, we have a common purpose. Everyone knows their work matters. The person building ships, the farmer growing food, the teacher educating children, they all know they are part of something bigger. And when the harvesters come, we will be ready," Lisa said firmly, "or we will die trying. Either way, we will face it together." 10 years after activation, Jake stood on the observation deck of Bastion Station, the massive defense platform at the edge of the solar system. Through the windows, he could see the fleet. Hundreds of ships, each one incorporating technology the architects had died learning. Amy Brooks joined him. She was older now, with lines of stress around her eyes, but she smiled when she saw him. "Thinking about the choice?" she asked. "Always," Jake admitted. "Do you regret it?" Jake thought about that. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that we live in a universe where things like the harvesters exist. But do I regret the specific choice I made?" He shook his head. "No. We are doing this on our terms. We are fighting for our right to exist. That matters." Amy nodded. She pointed to the fleet. 20 years ago, the biggest ship humanity had ever built could carry 50 people to Mars. Now look at us. We have vessels that can carry thousands. We have weapons that can destroy moons. We have become something new. We had to, Jake said. Evolution by fire. The architects would be proud, Amy said quietly. Jake was not sure about that. The architects had been beings of crystal and light, ancient and wise. Humans were young and violent and messy. But maybe that was exactly what was needed. 15 years after activation, humanity made first contact with another species. Not the Harvesters, but a small civilization on the other side of the galaxy. They had also found a sentinel. They had also learned the truth. The meeting happened via quantum communication, carefully shielded by the shroud technology. The other species called themselves the Keleth. They looked nothing like humans, but they shared the same determination to survive. We chose to hide, their representative said. We activated the shroud and have been living under it for 300 years. But we still live in fear. Every day we wonder if today is the day our disguise fails. We chose differently, Jake told them. We are preparing to fight. That is suicide, the Keleth said. Maybe, Jake agreed. But it is our choice. And if we survive, maybe others will find hope in that. The Keleth were quiet for a long moment. Then their representative said something that Jake,